Alright, so good evening guys. So let's start with the current affairs of the past 1 week. So we'll be discussing these news as in front of you. The very first being the mission for Atmanirbharta in pulses. Now Atmanirbharta means being self-sufficient or independent. So India wants to become self-sufficient when it comes to pulses. Now this Atmanirbharta in pulses is not a new thing in the sense that this has already been mentioned in the last year's budget, that is 25-26, in which the government of India had already mentioned about the Atmanirbharta in pulses. Now that is going to come into effect from going forward, or you can say from right now. So we'll see what is this Atmanirbharta all about, what are the pulses that the government is talking about, how much money is the government allocating, what are the provisions, and how the government will try to become in or make the country independent when it comes to the pulses. Second is RBI's credit and consumer protection reform. So here this credit reform is with respect to the MSME, wherein the amount of credit that is given without any collateral, the limit of it has been doubled from 10 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees. At the same time, there has been a reform which is going to provide protection to the consumers. Now what is that protection? The amount of protection that is provided is up to 25,000 rupees. So we will see what kind of protection we are talking about, and this protection is against what kind of scams or frauds. Next is the advanced chemistry cell production linked incentive subsidy. So there is a concept of production linked incentive subsidies. It's a very generic concept, but under this concept there are a production of a lot of things that is taking place. One such thing is the advanced chemistry cell. The other things here are the production with respect to the photovoltaic cell, the renewable energy production. So what is this incentive, production link incentive subsidy? This is an incentive subsidy in which you will get higher incentive if you produce more. So more incentive with more production. So here the incentive is actually linked to the production that you do. Now, why is this in news? Because there has been a lot of delay, and this production of the advanced chemical cell is lagging a lot, as a result of which this is in news. So we will discuss in detail. We will see what are these chemistry cells and how much delay they are having, so on and so forth. Next is about remembering Leo D'Souza, who transformed the cashew industry. So India grows a good amount of cashew. Now how Leo D'Souza transformed this cashew industry, we will see that. We will see the method wherein the grafting is done for the plants, specifically the cashew plant. So what is the process of grafting, how it is done, and how it has transformed the cashew industry is what we will see. Then you have traditional delicacies as next Makhana moment. So what is this Makhana moment? See, what happens is some of the delicacies, because of certain reasons, they become quite prominent, and then there will be an added attention to that particular delicacy, subsequent to which they can then get the GI tag, they can get the publicity, so on and so forth, and then the production and the value chain in that particular produce will improve, will increase. Now in a similar fashion that has happened with respect to Makhana. Now in the last budget, government talked about the Makhana board, right? We see that also a bit. So on the same lines, there are other traditional delicacies that we are talking about, how it can have their own Makhana moment, wherein they have also now come in the publicity. So how we can develop on them and create export oriented value from them as well is what we will see in this particular news. So let's get started with the very first one, that is mission for Atmanirbharta in pulses. Now, as I said, this was already mentioned in the previous budget, but now what has happened is a roadmap for Atmanirbharta. That means a roadmap for self-reliance in the pulses. There are 3 pulses that we will talk about. What are these 3 pulses? You have tur dal, right? You also call it as the arhar. Then you have the masoor, and the urad dal is what you are going to have. So in these three pulses, we are talking about self-reliance. So there has been a roadmap which has been finalized recently at the Food Legumes Research Center in Madhya Pradesh, as a result of which it is in news. So what is this scheme all about? It is a centrally sponsored scheme. So the scheme by the government of India can either be a central sector scheme or a centrally sponsored scheme. If it is a central sector scheme, it means that the entire cost will be borne by the government of India. However, if the scheme is centrally sponsored scheme, that means the cost will be borne by the government of India plus the states. So that is what a centrally sponsored scheme means. So the outlay for this is around 11,440 crores. Exact number you don't have to remember as such, but around about 11,440 crores is more than enough. Now, the duration for this is 2025-26. Now, it has been finalized now, but we are taking financial year already, which had started, and it is in fact about to end. Anyway, this is the duration, and what is the aim of it? To achieve self-sufficiency or self-reliance in the pulses. Now, let us understand what is the need for having self-reliance in pulses. That the reason is, see, we are producing a good amount of pulses, but our consumption of pulses is very high. So of course, because close to 145 crore population and beyond, the exact figures will be released when 2027 the census gets done, but approximately based on various estimation, we are around about 145 crore of population. Huge amount of population which is also vegetarian in nature. Now, protein source, the pulses can be a very good source of protein, especially for the vegetarians, and for in fact everyone alike. They are a good source of protein. Now, because of such huge population, of course, the consumption of the pulses is also quite high. In fact, the pulses contribute around 20 to 25% of the protein intake of the people of India. So, because the consumption is high, because it forms such a big source of protein for the people, so the per capita intake is quite high. Even though that per capita intake is well below the recommended level, imagine if tomorrow we all start having good amount of protein and the source of protein is pulses, it is going to only increase the intake of the pulses, and pulses being too costly, many poor people are not even able to afford that. So if all that is also made possible, more and more will be required if we eat only the recommended amount. So it is only going to further increase. But even though the consumption is so high, but the production is not keeping up the pace. That does not mean production is not much or it's not increasing. That has also increased. As you can see, production increased from 192 lakh tons to 252 lakh tons in the last around 11 to 12 years. However, still we are importing approximately 47.38 lakh tons we have imported. So we are producing 250, we are importing approximately 50. So the total is around 300. So 1/6 is the amount of the total amount that we are importing. So around 18% or 17% or so is what we are importing. Since our imports are so high, as a result of which the time is very ripe now in order to focus on providing self-reliance in the pulses. If we are able to do that, we are going to save a lot of foreign exchange. We will not have to pay in dollars or other foreign exchange in order to import, so we will save that. It will protect the farmers from global price volatility also. Our farmers can produce and earn more as well, right? And if the production is more, the cost will also come down for the consumers as well. So these are the benefits that will accrue. And as I mentioned, so let's look at the objectives and targets. As I mentioned, there are three pulses that are being talked about. One is the tur dal or tur pulses, that is arhar. The other is urad, and the third one is masoor. So what is the target over here? The target is to expand cultivation by 35 lakh hectares. And this will raise the total area to 310 lakh hectares, right? The target production is 350 lakh tons by 2030. As of now, our requirement is 300 lakh tons. By 2030, 31, of course the requirement will also increase. So we cannot target for only 300 lakh tons because that satisfies only present requirement. In the future requirement will increase further, so we have to target a higher number. The number targeted here is basically 350 lakh tons by 2030-31. Now how that can be made possible? One thing is to expand the area under the pulses cultivation. The other is to improve the yield. Improve the yield means per hectare production should increase. Now we will be having around 310 lakh hectares and we want around 350 lakh tons. So somewhere around 1.1 ton per hectare is what we want as a production. We want to improve our yield. First, expand the area under cultivation, improve the yield as well in order to ensure that there is self-sufficiency. Now, what is the operational strategy by the government? The government is going to provide the details, the awareness, the seed, the tracking of the seed, the quality of the seed. All those things will be tracked through the Sathi portal, that is seed authentication, traceability and holistic inventory. So the very basic thing is what? Of course land is there which we need to expand, plus seeds are also important. So what quality of seeds are there, how much inventory is there? There should not be delay in the provision for the seeds, or else the farmer may start growing something else if the seeds are delayed. Now this portal is developed by the Ministry of Agriculture. Okay. It is going to track the entire life cycle of the seed: production, certification, licensing and sale. It is going to ensure, of course, the quality of seed. Also, one very important thing, in fact this can be a direct statement in your question, the government has assured procurement. 100% of procurement of tur, urad, masoor is going to take place in the next 4 years. So the farmers also need not worry about over here. The agencies that are involved here is, of course, the National Agriculture Cooperation Market Federation of India, National Cooperative Consumers Federation. These are certain factual statements that you should remember, and all this is going to happen under Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan. Pradhan Mantri here of course means the Prime Minister. Annadata here is basically the farmer, the giver of the cereals or food grains. Aay here means the income. Aay means income. Sanrakshan means protection or protection of the income. Abhiyan means mission. So this is Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan. Roadmap highlights, basically they are going to work in a cluster based approach. You will create certain cluster which is concentrated with respect to the production of the pulses. 1000 plus pulse mills across India will be there. 55 in Madhya Pradesh. Subsidy around 25 lakh per unit for this pulses mill will be provided. Seed to market model, direct state distribution. Seed to market model means trying to increase the efficiency of the supply chain and the logistics over here. Next, the key facts about pulses, some of the facts. So now this particular thing is in news, but geographical things about the pulses can also be asked, environmental related things can also be asked. So what are pulses? Basically they are edible seeds of Leguminosae family. This is the Leguminosae family that they belong to. They are high in protein, they are high in fiber, and they are low in fat. Now these plants are also nitrogen fixing plants. They improve the fertility of the soil. Now nitrogen fixing plant means what? They fix nitrogen. What is meant by fixing nitrogen? See, the nitrogen would be present as, this is nitrogen, this nitrogen is present, this is the nitrogen gas that is present. Now this nitrogen gas cannot be, the soil cannot intake this directly. So this needs to be converted into a nitrogen compound. This needs to be converted into the nitrogen compound. Now what can be those nitrogen compounds? So you have the NH3, you have ammonia, you have ammonium. It needs to be converted into NH3, NH4, so on and so forth. This conversion is carried out by this leguminous plant, that is the pulses, and this is known as fixation or nitrogen fixation. I hope that's clear. Let's move ahead. The climatic condition required is 20 to 27 degrees Celsius, 25 to 60 centimeter of rainfall, and sandy loamy soil. Right. If you look at the output or the certain facts, India is the largest producer of pulses. India is also the largest consumer of pulses. We have about approximately 25% share in the global market. All right, so that's about it. Yes, online students, if you have any doubts, please ask me. Okay, let's move ahead to the next one, that is RBI's credit and consumer protection. So here two things we are going to discuss. First is the credit, second is the consumer protection. Credit is what? Credit with respect to the MSMEs, micro, small and medium enterprises. Second is protection of the consumer from the frauds and the scams that take place. So these two reforms the RBI has brought in. So first, let us look at the reforms in the credit sector. So as I have told you, doubling of the collateral-free loans for the MSMEs. What are collateral? Collateral is sort of a security. When you take loan, you would get loan against a particular security. Let's say if you have a house, you can put your house as mortgage and take some loan. That's why you will be getting a loan, or else why will anyone give you the loan? But there can be requirement of loan and you might not have any collateral. In that case also, you are provided loan under certain schemes for certain things. For MSME, you are provided the loan. Now that limit of collateral free loan, which was of 10 lakh rupees, has now been increased to 20 lakh. So this is basically what the reform is all about. This is going to ease the financing constraints. It is going to provide more credit, easier credit. Non-collateral loans are there, so you don't even have to give any collateral. It will reduce the dependence on the informal credit. Or else, if you don't get the credit from here, you will go to the informal sources, the landlords, the creditors in the market. They will charge you a higher interest rate. And when they charge you the higher interest rate, you may not be able to repay, you may not be able to carry out the business. So it may be a constraint on you, as a result of which this will incentivize the people to take loans from the institutional sources of credit only. Right? Next, the bank are allowed to finance the listed rates. So this is another reform. What are rates? Rates are basically the real estate investment trust. So let us understand the concept of this real estate investment trust. See, what is real estate first of all? A similar concept that they are going to talk about here is also that of InvITs. So we will see the InvITs concept a bit later on. So this is rate. Similar to rate is the concept of InvITs, right? Important for us to understand both of them together. So rate is basically the real estate investment trust, and InvITs is nothing but the infrastructure investment trust. Infrastructure investment trust. Now real estate and infrastructure, they sound similar, but there is a slight difference. I'll tell you that. Now first let's understand the concept. So you might have seen in Bengaluru, there is a big builder by the name of Prestige. They build big apartments, residential buildings, costly and amazing flats, etc. is what they provide. Now, some of us might also want to become a builder. If we want to become a builder, it's a costly affair. Now, you might realize that there is a huge amount of profit in becoming a builder. You make the buildings, you sell the flat, you earn a huge amount of profit. Now, if you want to do that, what do you need? You first of all need land, a big amount of land. If you don't have it, you'll have to buy it. And then on top of that, you will have to construct the building over there, which again requires money. So basically, you require huge amount of capital over here. Crores, tens and hundreds of crores of rupees is what you will require. As a result of which, you may not be able to become a builder if you don't have that much amount of land and money with you. Then what can be done in that case? You want your exposure to the real estate market, but you don't have that money to get the exposure. Now comes the concept of the real estate investment trusts. So what are these trusts? Now, if let's say I cannot become a builder myself, a real estate builder, but I want exposure to that market. So what I will do is I will invest in REITs, real estate investment trusts. So what is this rates? These rates are issued by certain real estate companies. They will issue these rates and I am going to buy those rates by giving them that money. So by this way, this company is going to collect huge amount of money from the retail investors. And by collecting these few lakhs of rupees from each individual, by collecting such lakhs of rupees from hundreds and thousands of individuals, there is going to be a huge sum of crores and crores of rupees would be created. And using that pool of fund, the real estate would be constructed. The commercial apartments, the commercial areas or the residential areas, generally the big buildings would be constructed, and then it would be sold out, given on lease, rent, so on and so forth, which will then generate income. And then that income would be distributed among the people with respect to the proportion of money that they have invested. So by doing this, what has happened? You got the exposure to the real estate sector, even with small amount of money. And what did the real estate company got? The real estate company got a bigger chunk of fund which helped them to expand their business even more. So that is the idea of real estate investment trust. Now, a similar thing, in fact exactly the same thing, is the infrastructure investment trusts. Now, the process and everything remains the same. It's simply that instead of real estate, it is infrastructure. So what is the difference between real estate and infrastructure? Real estate is basically the buildings which can be commercial, non-commercial, that is residential, etc. is the real estate. What is infrastructure? These are the heavy civil construction that takes place. Roads, toll roads, bridges, runways, all those things which are big construction or civil construction is classified as the infrastructure. This should be more than enough for your examination. If you want to go into the detail, I'll just give you a small insight. When you construct these big infrastructure, massive things will be required. A simple thing would be, when you require steel rods, the diameter of the steel rods would be way bigger. Small size diameters will not be used at all in the in civil infrastructure. You would be having diameters worth 16 mm and beyond, 20, 25, 32, so on and so forth. Whereas in certain residential building, even a 2-3 floor building that are there, even 8 mm, 12 mm bars are used. So very small bars, because the structure is not that massive, whereas the massiveness of structure will be here. These are also known as the heavy civil infrastructure, whereas a residential building as such is not a heavy civil infrastructure. So that is the difference. But as I mentioned, the working remains the same. Let's move ahead. The second thing is about the customer protection framework. So what the RBI is doing over here is, there are a lot of scams and frauds that take place. And even if you do a transaction, a big transaction, you get a call that did you make the transaction. Let's say, for example, if you would not have made that transaction, then what happens? The call simply asks you, have you made the transaction? If yes, press 1. If no, press 2 to freeze your account, to freeze your card, to freeze net banking, so on and so forth. So what does that call do? It will simply freeze the account for any subsequent transaction. But what has happened to the previous transaction, which might not be an authorized one? That is gone. The money is gone. You could raise the issue with the RBI ombudsman. You might or might not get the money back. If you get the money back, you receive it. If you don't get the money back, there is no traceability, etc., then nothing might be done in that case. Correct? But now the RBI has brought in a reform. Under that reform, what will happen is, let's say if there was an unauthorized transaction, so you can file a complaint, and whether the money comes back to the account or not from the person who scammed you, you will still get up to 25,000 rupees back. Up to 25,000 rupees back. So mandates 100% refund of your bank miss. So this is a different policy about. So we are talking about the scams and all that can be taking place. So you will get the money back. Plus there are, so I hope that is clear. So in this case, what happens, even if the money is not coming back, that's not a problem. Up to 25,000 is assured. Now, if the scam was a bigger scam of 10 lakh rupees, still you will get only 25. If the money comes back completely, it's good. If it does not, still you will get only up to 25,000. So basically by this reform, the RBI is trying to safeguard the small scams that takes place and which hampers the people who are already having very small amount of savings itself. Right? I hope that's clear. Now, next is harmonized rules for recovery agents. Now, what are recovery agents? This is another reform. See, when you take a loan, right, you have to pay back. If you don't pay back, the banks will put certain recovery agents behind your back. They will call you, they will come to the address, and then they can also threaten you. But however, the RBI has made it very clear that even if the person is not paying the EMI, not able to, or not paying, you cannot threaten the borrower, no matter what. And if you are being threatened, you can actually file a complaint against the recovery agent and basically against the bank who has done that against you. I hope that's clear. Next is under the same reforms, Mission Saksham for urban cooperative banks. Saksham means capacity, capability, or an ability of someone. So here we are talking about mission capability. So what does this do? It basically provides sector-wide capacity building and certification framework. For which banks? For the cooperative banks. Now, what are cooperative banks? See, cooperative banks, banks basically are intermediaries. Bank takes money from people who have and gives money to people who don't have in the form of loan. It gives you 5% interest rate on your fixed deposit and it charges you 9% interest rate on your home loans. The difference between these two interest rates is the spread of the bank, and from that the bank does some administrative expenditure and generates profit out of that. Now, if the people or the citizens of India, they come together and form their own bank, they can register this bank under the Cooperative Societies Registration Act, right, and call this as a cooperative bank. Here what will happen is all of us can come together and form a cooperative bank, right, and we will become the members of the cooperative bank, and this cooperative bank will give loan only to the members of the bank. Now, why we are doing that? Because in the market the interest rates etc. are high. We want to get the loans at lower interest rates, so we can form a cooperative bank and we can give the money to the members of the cooperative bank. What is the benefit over here? The bank works on no profit, no loss principle. The bank works on no profit, no loss principle. Since there is no profit, no loss principle, the bank is not looking for a profit, as a result of which the bank will give you a loan at a lower interest rate. I hope that is clear. At the same time, this bank gives loan only to the members, right? So you need to be a member in order to get the loan. At the same time, any decisions that are being taken by the bank is to be voted upon, and one member gets one vote. So there is equality also. Every member is also going to get the same number of vote, that is one member, one vote. So there is equality of voting. Only the members can get the vote. It works on no profit, no loss, and gives you loans at the lower interest rate. So this is about the changes, and in which I have already told you it is similar to rates. Next is the Advanced Chemistry Cell Production Linked Incentive Scheme. As I said, there is Production Linked Incentive Scheme is an umbrella term under which there are various production that are linked to, there are various goods that are given incentive linked to production. As I told, photovoltaic cell, renewable energy equipment, and now you also have the chemistry cell production, which is under the government's production linked incentive subsidy. So the government will give you incentive if you produce more of this. Now, the thing over here is why this is in news. It is in news because a recent report has suggested that there is a serious implementation challenge. The scheme is in place, but it is not being implemented. The targets are nowhere to be achieved. It is being, there is a lot of delay in this. That is why it is in news. So let us have a look at these things. So what is this? It was launched in October 2021. Remember, important is which ministry has launched it becomes very important for any scheme. So Ministry of Heavy Industry has launched it. Aim is of course to promote domestic manufacturing of next generation batteries. Its focus is on the lithium ion, or you say Li-ion batteries that are there, and electric vehicles, energy storage systems, so on and so forth. Now what is this advanced chemistry cells? Now these advanced, now why are we calling them advanced? There needs to be something that is advanced. See, the traditional chemistry cell batteries that are there, see, you charge them, you discharge them, there is only so many repetitions that you can do and the cell keeps on reducing the efficiency. In the lithium ion batteries, you can have lakhs and lakhs of charging and discharging and the efficiency will still be maintained. So it is going to give you a higher efficiency over here. So advanced chemistry cell, they use lithium ion technology. They have higher energy density. That means in small, the storage requirement will be small for generating the same amount of capacity which was required by your sulfur cell, or you can liquid cell cells that are there. In fact, even in your inverters, you know, some inverters will have lithium ion battery which gives you a very good efficiency. Some will have the liquid sulfur cell batteries that are there which will have a liquid in it which can spill every now and then, can be very hazardous as well. So that is the idea. You can find these kind of cells in your house as well. It gives you longer life, it gives you faster charging. So in the electric vehicles, your Ola vehicle, the other electric vehicles that are there, the lithium ion batteries are used, because if you use the sulfuric acid battery and all those batteries, it will require more space, it will make the vehicle also heavier, whereas this is compact and in less space it can give you higher amount of energy. What is the objective of the scheme? Of course, the objective is to have domestic battery production. It is also going to reduce the import, especially import from the China, attract the private investment. Of course, when you are giving incentives to produce more and more, private sector will of course be inclined to start more production. It will lower the battery cost, accelerate the EV and energy storage adoption. More and more electric vehicles will come and it can be replacing the traditional petrol vehicles that are there. So electric vehicle can be considered to be less polluting. However, the issue is, if electric vehicle is less polluting, but what if the electricity is generated using thermal power plant? That itself has already given a lot of pollution. So there also we are working towards renewable energy electricity production. Let's talk about the target. Target is to create 50 gigawatt hour of battery manufacturing capacity by 2026, but we are nowhere near that, right? So out of the 50 gigawatt target, only 30 gigawatt has actually been allotted, and only 1.4 gigawatt are commissioned, 8.6 gigawatt under delayed development that is there. So the manufacturing here is under this scheme is quite lethargic. It leads to an outcome gap. We assumed or we wanted a 50 gigawatt hour capacity, but the capacity that is actually being produced is very less. Also, no incentives disbursed against 2,900 crore of target. So this much amount of target that has been met, the government has not even disbursed the subsidy, leading to a problem. Now there is a diagram over here. It's important because related to the scheme, since the cell is related, the UPSC can ask you technical questions as well. So this is basically a system of battery. You have anode. Anode is basically negative charge, and then you have the cathode, which is positive charge. Why this name anode and cathode? So this name comes from, anode comes from anion, a negatively charged electron, a negatively charged ion, that is anion, and the positively charged ion is basically the cation that is there. So here and here you have the two different charges, anode and cathode. Now this is how the flow will take place. Now this is linked with a circuit, negative positive. So this flow is clear, but how is the flow taking place? This is basically the liquid under which flow takes place. So this liquid acts as a medium of flow of current. So this is how the entire flow system is. The only important thing is cathode is cation, which is positive, anode is anion, which is negative, and then here it can be any solution. You have the copper sulfate, you have the zinc sulfate solution that are there through which the current will pass. If you put your hand in this, you know there will be electric shock, so you have to avoid that, right? Next, let's move on to the next. Any questions, guys? If you have any questions, please ask. Moving ahead, remembering Leo D'Souza, who transformed the cashew industry. So he basically pioneered the breakthrough that transformed the cashew industry, led to the increase in production. We will see how he did that. Basically taking the help of the tissue grafting, so on and so forth. So let us have a look at that. First, let's talk about the cashew in India. So you need to know a few basics. So Anacardium occidental. Now this is what the cashew which is native to Brazil, which is predominantly grown in India. It was introduced by the Portuguese in the 16th century. Very important, can be asked as a history question as well. Initially used for stabilize. This fact becomes really important. Now, the agroecological condition and the geographical condition required here is, it requires tropical climate, 600, this is 60 to 350 centimeter of, or 600, yes, 60 to 350 centimeter of rainfall is required, suitable for the poor or lateric soil that are there. The major states that you have: Kerala, Karnataka, Goa, also Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha and West Bengal. These are the top cashew producing states. Economic importance: export of cashew kernels, that means cashews are exported as well. Production of cashew nutshell liquids. This cashew nutshell liquid is produced and it works as certain lubricants as well. Okay. But there are constraints. Let us see what are the constraints over here. Genetic variability from seed and graft propagation. So there is variability in the genetics. So the type of crops that are being grown is not the one that are prevalent. Variability will be there. Long gestation period requires, if you start cashew farming now, it is going to take time for it to give benefit to you. That is there. Aging of the plantations, already existing plantations. Tea mosquito bug infestation is another issue in the cashew nut industry. Then let's understand the role of tissue culture. So I have told you, using tissue culture, there has been prevalence of production of cashew nut. So let's understand the role of that. Now, what is tissue culture? So what you do in tissue culture is, so this is, let's say, the part of the plant, right? So from this you take the small amount of tissue sample, okay, from the parent plant, and then you grow that tissue. You grow that tissue on that particular disc. So tissue sample placed in agar growth medium. This is a controlled medium under which the samples are grown, multiple samples. Now from this, the sample will develop into tiny plantlets, as you can see, and then you will take out that plantlets and basically plant them in the compost, in the organic compost in the field. So you will get faster growth over there. This is known as the tissue culture. Tissue culture means taking out the tissue and generating or developing plants out of the tissue is tissue culture. Okay. Now this would not be possible in any and every plant. So for example, if you certain plants you have to take out completely from the root. Without the root it will not grow again. But certain plants can grow even without the root, just from their stem, etc. It can also grow. So what the breakthrough, what breakthrough was got by Leo D'Souza is the world's first successful lab to soil transfer of tissue cultured cashew. So that tissue culture that we talked about, so he was a part of a team which for the first time successfully transferred that lab, the tissue culturing from the lab to the soil. That means what? It is growing here. it is growing here. At times what happens if you put back into the climatic condition or into the field, it may not grow. So first time it was successfully done for cashew nut in 1990. That is what his contribution was. Now if you look at the socio-economic sensitivity of the cashew nut sector, the thing is, it predominantly employs the women laborers that are there. So 80% plus workforce is women. The productivity in here is going to directly impact the women. It is going to impact the farmers' livelihood in general as well. Okay, I hope that's clear. Yes guys, any doubts? So let's move on to the next one, talking about traditional delicacies as the next makhana moment. So I have talked about the makhana, right? Makhana gained popularity. In the last budget, government talked about the makhana board. Why? See, what was happening was Bihar is the dominant state with respect to makhana production. Bihar was producing the makhanas, but these makhanas are then sent to the other states in its raw form without much of value addition. The other states, what they do is they keep adding value onto it. When they keep adding value onto it, they are again then sending it to other states and selling it in their states and generating a lot of profits. But the state of Bihar, which is actually growing the huge amount of makhana, is not getting any profit. So the government in the previous budget said that we will come up with the makhana board. What will makhana board do? Makhana board will ensure that the value addition, processing, etc. of the makhana is done within the state of Bihar, so that the benefit can also accrue to the state of Bihar from the production of makhana. Now on these lines, this article talks about developing the other traditional delicacies as well on the lines of makhana, right? So what is the concept here? You will have the traditional delicacies which are region specific. So what you do is you develop them so that you can generate value out of them. So similar to the makhana movement, you can have movement for various other delicacies also. The two delicacy that it talks about is thetri and kurmi. So first is thetri. Thetri, as you can see, this is basically made up of besan. What is besan? This is the gram flour. This is the gram flour, and of course you will add the spices, condiments, etc. you will add. This is something that is deep fried. This is deep fried, and the moment you fry something, it increases its shelf life. So its shelf life will be high, longer shelf life it is provided. Since the shelf life here is more, that means what? That means you can actually globally export that as well. Right? If you have the milk products or milk sweets, milk confectionaries which needs to be consumed on the same day, it is quite difficult to basically export them globally. So here, since it's deep fried, it's going to increase its shelf life. Since the shelf life is increased, you can export it globally as well, because in global trade, time required will be more. And since it has a higher shelf life, so it can easily be exported globally as well. Next is the khurmi dish, known with different names in different states, but here we are talking it khurmi. Now khurmi is made up of, this is khurmi made up of jaggery, made up of wheat flour and jaggery. Jaggery is the sweetener. Of course, some people can use sugar as well, but traditionally jaggery is used to provide it the sweetness. So this again is going to be deep fried, as a result of which again can be exported. So we can develop export oriented economy along these regional delicacies that are there. What are the economic angle to it? It can be scaled using the self-help groups, the farmer producer organization, the non-farm rural income. It will add on to the non-farm rural income, specifically going to benefit the women workers that are involved in preparing these delicacies. And India has around 80 lakh plus of self-help groups related to livelihood. We can utilize or leverage those self-help groups in this particular sector. India's packaged snacks market is around $15 to $20 billion. It can be further enhanced over here, right? So it can lead to a next makhana pathway, as in like makhana has got the GI tag, these things can also get the GI tag, which makes it more popular and more attractive for the people to consume. I hope that's clear. Now, one important thing over here is the geographical indication tag, that is the GI tag. Now, what is this GI tag? Basically, certain things become prominent in certain areas. So you have makhana in Bihar, you have the chappal of Kolhapur, the Kolhapuri chappal from Kolhapur, you have the various toys, various delicacies, etc., which have gotten the GI tag. Now, because you have let's say Kadaknath, which is a type of cock basically, which gives up high protein meat that comes out of it, right? So all those things are basically GI tagged. Now, since they are GI tagged, it gives them some amount of authenticity. Like the peda from Agra is again quite authentic, like this. So when they get authenticity, it gets publicity, authenticity, quality, taste, everything, and then it can be marketed and sold at a premium price also, so that their producer, their grower, their manufacturer can also earn good amount of price. And like this, it can be famous in India and subsequently famous outside India as well, right? So that is basically the concept of the GI tag. Right? So any doubts still here? So I have explained the concept of GI tag also. Every year some or the other goods, they get the GI tag. In the list of GI tags, there will be hundreds of things that are there. Okay? So you just can browse through it once, but in a year, if certain new things are getting GI tag, you should know that in the last 1 year, what all are the things that got the GI tags. So that's about it. Guys, if you have any doubts, please ask me. Right, or let's move ahead with the MCQs on these topics. So this is the very first one. With reference to mission Atmanirbharta in pulses, consider the following statements. Right, statement 1. Statement 1 says that it aims to expand pulses cultivation by 35 lakh hectares. That is by 2030-31. Yes, that is correct. It guarantees 100% procurement of tur, urad and masoor. See, UPSC can change these names, so be careful. You should remember the 3 names for 4 years, next 4 years. That is also correct. So 1 is correct, that means this is gone. 2 is also correct, that means this is also gone. So you are left with 2 options, that is A and D. So we need to see whether 3 is correct or not. 3 says it is implemented as a central sector scheme fully funded by the union government. So I told you initially only there are 2 types of scheme by the government of India: central sector scheme and centrally sponsored scheme. Central sector scheme are funded completely by the government of India. Centrally sponsored scheme is funded by the state government and the central government together. Now this particular scheme for the Atmanirbharta in pulses is basically a centrally sponsored scheme wherein the state and the union government will both be there. Hence it's not a central sector scheme. Hence third statement is incorrect. Hence the correct answer is A, that is 1 and 2. Let's move ahead. Next, with reference to the recent measures introduced by the Reserve Bank of India, consider the following statements. The limit of collateral-free loans to MSMEs has been proposed to be increased to 20 lakh rupees. That is correct. So option B is gone. Banks were earlier permitted to lend to REITs but not to InvITs. That is incorrect. They were not permitted to REITs also. So 2 will be incorrect. Let's see now between A and D. A framework has been proposed to compensate customers up to 25,000 for small value fraudulent digital transactions. That is absolutely correct. So the correct answer is here A, that is 1 and 3. Let's move ahead to third. With reference to advanced chemistry cell production linked incentive scheme, consider the following statements. The scheme targets creation of 50 gigawatt hour battery manufacturing capacity by 2026. That is correct. So option B is gone. Incentives are linked to battery production and subject to phased domestic value addition requirements. That is correct. In fact, because it is subject to domestic value addition requirement, that is why in one of the current affairs we covered wherein China was making objection on India's scheme, saying that it violates the WTO's principle of national treatment. What is that principle of national treatment? When a good enters your country, foreign good enters your country, you do not be biased against it, you give it the same treatment that you give to the domestic product. So that we have already covered in the previous current affairs class. So that first statement was correct, second statement is also correct. So this is also gone. Now let's look at the third one. As of October 2025, the entire allotted capacity has been commissioned and incentives distributed. That is incorrect. So option D is incorrect. Option B, 1 and 2 only. Let's move on to the next. With reference to the use of tissue culture in cashew cultivation in India, consider the following statements. So there are again, I think, 3 statements. First statement says that tissue culture enables production of genetically identical and disease-free cashew nuts. Yes, see, enables this. Does it do it? Generally, these kind of questions are asked when the setter knows that yes, it does. Let's look at the second. Cashew is relatively easy to propagate through tissue culture due to low phenolic activity. No. A phenolic activity, the activity wherein there will be a lot of changes which will take internally. Successful lab to soil transfer of tissue cultured cashew plants can help address productivity constraint arising from the genetic variability. That is correct. So 1 and 3 here are correct. Let's move ahead to the next one. Now with reference to the idea of scaling traditional regional delicacies such as the thetri and the khurmi into organized market, consider the following statements. What is statement 1? Statement 1 says GI tagging and state-backed branding can help traditional foods command price premiums by signaling authenticity and cultural specificity. Now see, this is a very, very generic statement. Nothing specific has been said. Generally, generic statements are going to be right. Even if you don't know, about the particular scheme, but can GI tagging stay? If the state is backing you, of course, it can increase the authenticity, right? And it is going to generate some amount of premium money for you. So the statement 1 is correct. Now, when statement 1 is correct, the option D and option B are removed. Right, so you are left with either only 1 is correct or both are correct. Let's look at the second statement. Expansion of traditional delicacies into organized market necessarily. Now these kind of statements are extreme. Necessarily, that means it definitely requires that. May not necessarily be the case, but let us see. Sometimes there can be exceptions also. Necessarily requires large scale mechanized processing to achieve economic viability. No. To have a business on that regard, you need not necessarily need a mechanized and a large scale production also. Even a small one can be economically viable. So this is an extreme statement. Statement 2 is incorrect. So the correct answer is A, that is 1 only. Right, I hope that is clear. So by that we conclude today's the last week's current affairs. There are other topics also which you should go through, and the handouts would have been provided to you. Please read, please revise from them. If you just complete whatever is being covered and is being given to your handout through your handouts, you should be able to easily answer the current affairs based question. So that's about it. Thank you so much. Stay tuned with Legacy IAS Academy's YouTube channel for such lectures as well as other content also. Thank you.